Comment down what you think about these stories or just a hello, and the team will reply. We always reply to the comments. As always, please like and subscribe and help this channel grow. Thank you. My name is Claire, and I want to share my harrowing experience using a popular dating app that ended up being a complete nightmare. I'm a single woman in my late 20s living in a big city. After being focused on my career for so long, I decided to get back into dating. All my friends were having success meeting people online, so I downloaded a highly rated dating app to see if I could find a relationship. After setting up my profile and uploading some cute photos, I started swiping. There were lots of decent looking guys with good jobs, but no one really caught my eye at first. Then one day Marcus appeared. His profile immediately grabbed my attention. Marcus was an attractive man in his early 30s with short brown hair and a warm smile. His pictures showed him rock climbing, golfing, and posing in a nice suit. His bio said he was an entrepreneur who founded a successful tech startup downtown. Everything about his profile gave the impression of a charming, adventurous, and driven guy. We matched, and Marcus messaged me right away. We started chatting and really hit it off. He asked thoughtful questions about my job, family, and interests. I told him about my position as a marketing manager and all the details of working for a global corporation. Marcus remembered little things I mentioned, like my favorite coffee order and foods. He was such an engaged and attentive conversationalist. After a week of great messaging interactions, Marcus finally asked me out on a proper first date. I felt so excited to meet this seemingly amazing guy in person. The date went even better than I could have imagined. Marcus took me to a trendy new restaurant downtown that I had been wanting to try. He looked just as handsome and put together as his pictures. Over dinner, our conversation flowed smoothly from our respective careers, funny childhood stories, favorite travel destinations, and more. I found Marcus so easy to talk to. He told me all about growing up locally and getting the idea for his tech company after college. At one point, Marcus brought up my favorite beach vacation from childhood that I had told him about. I was pleasantly surprised he remembered such a small detail from one of our many conversations. This guy really was thoughtful and attentive. After such an incredible first date, we started seeing each other regularly. Over the next several weeks, we went on creative date activities that Marcus tailored specifically to my interests, like a pottery painting class and scenic hike. He remembered my favorite foods and movies, ordering and suggesting them thoughtfully. I was really impressed and flattered that someone paid such close attention to the little details about me. Things seemed to be going so well. But then, some strange things started happening. We were talking about pets one day, and Marcus casually asked how my childhood dog Rufus was doing. The thing is, I never told Marcus the name of my first pet. I also noticed him reference a few other personal details about me that I definitely hadn't shared yet. When I asked him directly how he knew the name Rufus, Marcus just laughed it off. He claimed I must have told him the name before, and that he simply has a great memory. But I knew I hadn't shared that information. I started to feel very uncomfortable about the situation. That night, I decided to do some deeper digging into Marcus's background. I went online only to find barely any information about his supposed tech startup company. The website looked vague and hastily put together. His social media accounts were all recently created and had almost no posts or connections. It seemed like Marcus wasn't the successful entrepreneur he claimed to be at all. My suspicions skyrocketed when I noticed concerning activity coming from some of my online accounts. My inbox contained password reset emails for accounts I hadn't requested. I logged in and realized my Facebook, Instagram, and even online banking had been accessed by someone else. And then it hit me. Marcus had clearly hacked my personal accounts and information. Thinking back on that now, it was obvious how he cunningly gathered private details about me through our conversations, and used my dating app trust to manipulate me into sharing more. Once I put the pieces together, I immediately cut all contact with Marcus and went into damage control mode. But it was too late. He had my address, photos, financial information, and more. I was terrified about what he was planning to do with it. Some frantic Googling revealed I wasn't Marcus' only victim. There were multiple reports of the same profile pic linked to other sketchy dating app accounts using different names. He was a skilled predator who socially engineered dates to gain access to their personal data. And I had fallen for his scam. The entire relationship was fabricated to steal my private information. I felt so violated and shaken. My experience serves as a harsh but important reminder to be vigilant when meeting people online, even through seemingly safe platforms. Marcus was not the charming, successful guy I thought I was getting to know. He turned out to be a master manipulator disguising his true intentions behind an appealing dating profile. I'm just grateful I discovered the truth relatively early before things could have escalated even further. But the damage to my sense of privacy and security had already been done. I immediately increased my online protections, changed all account passwords, and removed my dating profiles. Still, it's unnerving knowing my personal information is out there in the hands of someone with disturbing intentions. This horrifying dating app experience left me feeling extremely wary about putting myself out there again anytime soon. From now on, I'll be doing extensive background checks before ever swiping right on someone new. My days of online dating are certainly over. I should have known something was off the moment I swiped right on Lucas. He seemed perfect, a successful businessman with a charming smile and impeccable style. Our initial conversation on the dating app was effortless. I was captivated by his wit and his genuine interest in my work as a social media influencer. When he asked me out, I eagerly said yes, thrilled at the prospect of meeting someone who not only appreciated my online presence, but also seemed to share my ambitions. Our first date was everything I could have hoped for. Lucas was attentive, funny, and surprisingly down to earth for someone of his stature. We talked for hours, losing track of time as we discovered shared passions and values. By the end of the night, I was smitten, convinced that this was the start of something special. As we continued seeing each other, Lucas became increasingly supportive of my online presence. He'd encourage me to share more personal details with my followers, assuring me that it would make me seem more relatable. At first, I was hesitant, worried about exposing too much of my private life to the digital world. But Lucas's enthusiasm was infectious, and I slowly started to heed his advice. I began posting glimpses into my daily life, my morning routines, my outfits, my workouts. The engagement on my posts skyrocketed, and Lucas was always there to celebrate my growing success. He'd comment on my photos, repost my stories, and even offer suggestions on how to further expand my brand. I was flattered by his interest and support, never suspecting that his intentions were anything but genuine. That's when the strange occurrences began. I'd find little gifts waiting for me at my doorstep: a scented candle, a set of fancy pens, a vintage necklace. There was no note, no indication of who they were from. I'd show Lucas, and he pulled me close, telling me not to worry, that he would protect me. Someone must have noticed how special you are, he'd say with a warm smile, and I'd feel a twinge of pride, convinced that my rising profile had caught the attention of an admirer. Then the messages started, cryptic, unsettling messages that would appear on my phone, sometimes in the middle of the night. "I see you," they'd say. "You look lovely today." I'd show Lucas, and he pulled me, offering reassurance and comfort. "It's probably just a harmless admirer," he'd murmur. "I won't let anyone hurt you." The final straw was when I started noticing a car following me. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but the more I paid attention, the more certain I became. The car would appear whenever I went out, whether it was to the grocery store or to meet a friend for coffee. I tried to lose it, but it would always reappear in my rearview mirror. I was terrified, my heart racing every time I saw that nondescript vehicle trailing me. That's when I confronted Lucas. I demanded to know what was going on, and the calm, collected facade he had maintained suddenly crumbled. With a twisted smile, he confessed everything. He had been using my online presence to sell my personal information on the dark web, preying on my desire for fame and exposure. The gifts, the messages, the stalker. It had all been orchestrated by him, all to make me feel vulnerable and dependent on him. I was horrified, nauseated by the realization that the man I had grown to care for had been exploiting me in the most despicable way. He had manipulated me, using my own insecurities and ambitions against me. I felt so foolish, so betrayed. In that moment, everything made sense. The way he had encouraged me to share more, the way he had reveled in my growing success. It had all been a carefully crafted plan to strip me of my privacy and sell it to the highest bidder. In the aftermath, I shut down my social media accounts, disconnected from the online world that had once been my sanctuary. The thought of anyone else having access to my personal information, of strangers knowing the intimate details of my life, was too much to bear. I moved out of my apartment, changed my phone number, and went into hiding, terrified that Lucas or his cohorts would come after me. It's been months since that fateful day, and I'm still trying to piece my life back together. The trauma of what happened has left me anxious and distrustful, constantly looking over my shoulder. I wonder if I'll ever feel safe again, if I'll ever be able to reclaim the confidence and joy I had in my online presence. The person I was before, the vibrant, self-assured influencer, feels like a distant memory, lost to the shadows of what Lucas has done. My name is Lily, and I want to share my experience using a popular dating app that ended up being a complete nightmare. I'm a 32-year-old successful businesswoman living in the city. I work long hours and haven't had much luck meeting men organically. My friends convinced me to try out this new dating app called Swipe Right that they said worked well for them. I decided to give it a shot since I was hoping to finally meet a nice guy. After setting up my profile and answering some questions about myself, I started swiping. There were a lot of men on the app, but most didn't seem like a good match. Then one day, I came across David's profile. He was 33, attractive, and his profile made him seem caring and devoted. David wrote that he was a single dad and included sweet photos of him with his young son. This immediately drew me in since I love children and have wanted to be a mother someday. David and I matched on the app and he messaged me right away. He was attentive and interested in learning all about me. He asked thoughtful questions about my job, family, and interests. I was impressed by how kind and engaged he was, especially compared to other men I had interacted with on the app. After a week of messaging daily, David asked me out on a proper first date. We decided to meet for dinner at a nice restaurant downtown. I was a bit nervous, but he immediately put me at ease. Over our meal, we opened up to each other. I told him things I would normally share on a first date, but he made me feel comfortable. He was also very open about his life as a single dad and sole caregiver to his 5-year-old son, Michael. David spoke up Michael with such love and pride. Our first date ended up lasting 4 hours since we lost track of time chatting. I hadn't instantly connected with someone like this in a long time. We continued going on dates over the next few weeks and grew closer. David took me to all his favorite local spots, and we just enjoyed spending time together. He was attentive, asked about my day, and did thoughtful things like cook me dinner or surprise me with flowers. After about 2 months of dating, we decided to make our relationship official. I met Michael and saw what an amazing father David was. He was so patient, loving, and devoted to his son. My feelings grew deeper, and I could picture a future together. David was supportive of my career goals and encouraged me. He seemed caring, trustworthy, and responsible. I hadn't met someone who seemed so compatible and with whom I shared such a strong connection. A few months later, things were going perfectly. We spent as much time together as we could. David would cook dinners for me during the week, and we'd hang out as a family with Michael on weekends. He felt like the partner I had always hoped to find. Then one Saturday evening, David had to cancel our plans last minute, saying Michael was sick. I was disappointed but understood. Later that night, I noticed in the background of a friend's Instagram story that David was out at a bar downtown. This seemed odd given his son was supposedly sick at home. I messaged David, but he didn't reply for hours. The next week, he canceled another date, again saying Michael needed him. My friend then told me she saw his profile back up on Swipe Right. I had a terrible gut feeling and decided to drive by his apartment the next night when he was supposedly home with his son. David's car wasn't there and all lights were off. I finally admitted to myself something seemed very wrong. I did a reverse image search using one of the old photos of Michael that David had sent me. It turned up results showing it was a stock image of a child model. My heart sank realizing he had lied about having a son. I confronted David and he tried to say it was a misunderstanding, but I knew he had manipulated me. In a state of shock, I started digging for anything I could find about who David really was. That's when I uncovered the truth. His real name was Dylan and he was married with 2 kids. He had multiple dating app profiles with different names on all of them. He had been juggling relationships with various women for years, lying about everything. I told his wife everything and she confirmed she had suspected him of cheating but didn't have proof. He had been living a complete double life and was a master at deception. I was devastated that this man I loved and trusted was actually a complete fraud. Looking back now, the signs were there all along that David was too good to be true. But I allowed myself to be blinded by how quickly I fell for him and how he seemed like the perfect caring partner. This experience taught me that people aren't always as they first appear, especially on dating apps. I let my guard down and was taken advantage of by a manipulative liar. I'm sharing my story as a cautionary tale to other women using dating apps. Be wary of profiles that seem too perfect or fast-moving relationships. Do your research and look for red flags. Don't ignore your intuition when things seem off. and never put your full trust in someone you just met online, no matter how convincing it may be. My experience was traumatic, but also a wake-up call to be more cautious with online dating. I hope others can learn from the horror story of my relationship with David and avoid being deceived. The app itself isn't the issue, it's deceitful people on it that can be dangerous. Stay safe out there. My name is Sarah, and this is the harrowing tale of how I was scammed out of my entire life savings by a man I met through a dating app. It's a cautionary story that I hope will prevent other women from making the same mistakes I did. It all started on a Saturday afternoon when I was home alone and bored. I had heard from friends that dating apps were a great way to meet new people. After debating it for a while, I decided to give it a shot. I downloaded one of the most popular dating apps and spent time crafting the perfect profile. I picked flattering photos of myself and tried to capture my personality in the bio. I was proud of the end result. That evening, I got a notification that a man named Daniel had liked my profile. I pulled up his pictures and thought he looked very handsome. His bio said he was 33 years old and a successful entrepreneur who enjoyed fine dining, travel, and philanthropy. He seemed sophisticated and mature. I was intrigued, so I swiped right to match with him. Daniel messaged me immediately, and we struck up an engaging conversation. He was attentive and asked thoughtful questions about my job, family, and hobbies. I found myself opening up more than I normally would. There was just something magnetic about the way Daniel interacted with me. After a week of constant messaging, he asked me out to dinner at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I enthusiastically accepted the date offer. I spent an entire day shopping for the perfect outfit for my big date. I got my hair and makeup professionally done because I wanted to look flawless. At exactly 7 p.m., Daniel picked me up in a brand new Mercedes Benz. I took this as evidence he was as wealthy and classy as his dating profile had suggested. At the restaurant, Daniel ordered an expensive bottle of wine and insisted we try the chef's tasting menu. Over the meal, he showered me with compliments and made me feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. We talked for hours, and I found myself mesmerized by his charm and success. This was by far the best first date I had ever been on. In the weeks that followed, Daniel treated me to extravagant dates around town. We went to Broadway shows, Michelin star restaurants, luxury hotels. He spoiled me with gifts like designer shoes, perfume, and a tennis bracelet from Tiffany's. I felt like I was living in a fairy tale romance. 2 months into dating, Daniel first brought up the prospect of a serious future together. He said he could envision me as his wife and the mother of his children. No man had ever spoken to me like this before. I was over the moon that such an impressive, wealthy man saw me in his future plans. It was around this time that Daniel started telling me about an incredible business opportunity he was planning to invest in. He said it was a tech startup with massive growth potential. Daniel's enthusiasm was infectious. He said if I invested a portion of my savings, we could share in the big profits once the company went public. In my state of complete infatuation, I blindly agreed to hand over $20,000 for my rainy day fund. Daniel promised me a 10x return on my investment. In the following weeks leading up to the supposed IPO date, I noticed Daniel becoming more distant and harder to reach. Our once frequent dates dwindled to just once or twice a month. His loving texts slowed to a trickle. When I asked if everything was okay, Daniel assured me he was just busy at work preparing for the big day. So I tried to be patient even as doubts started to creep into my mind. One Saturday, I decided to drive by Daniel's apartment unexpectedly and see if he was home. When I got to his building, the doorman had no record of a Daniel ever living there. I felt the blood drain from my face as I realized I'd been lied to. I frantically called and texted Daniel, but received no response. In that moment, I knew he had stolen my money and disappeared. With shaking hands, I contacted my bank and discovered my account was completely drained. Daniel had wired all $20,000 to an offshore account. I was in shock that the man I planned to marry had scammed me out of my entire life savings. The betrayal felt like a knife to the heart. In the weeks that followed, I fell into a deep depression. I blamed myself for being so foolish and letting my emotions blind me. The happier I had been during those blissful months of dating Daniel, the lower I now felt. I saw no way to recover what I had lost. Reporting Daniel to the police was useless since we had only ever communicated through the app. I had no records, no last name, no address. He didn't exist as far as the authorities were concerned. Losing those savings devastated me financially. I had to take a second job and move into a tiny apartment just to make ends meet. But worse was the emotional toll of losing what I thought was the love of my life. My faith in people was shattered. I don't know if I'll ever be able to open my heart up fully again after what happened. This experience taught me that you can't believe everything you see online. I let myself get swept up in a dating fantasy, ignoring all the warning signs. My story serves as a hard lesson to proceed with caution when meeting people through apps. Not all profiles portray an accurate picture. I had to learn this the hardest way possible. I was in a vulnerable place in my life when I downloaded that dating app. I'd just gotten out of a long-term relationship and missed having someone special in my life. After being single for a few months, I decided to give online dating a try. As I said on my profile, I couldn't help but get caught up in the excitement and hope that this could lead to me, my soulmate. I still vividly remember the day Ethan's profile popped up in my feed. His photo immediately caught my eye, showing a handsome man with captivating green eyes and a warm, genuine smile. His bio made him seem down to earth, but also smart and funny. We started messaging back and forth right away, and I was amazed at how effortlessly the conversation flowed. Ethan came across as charming and attentive, asking thoughtful questions about my job, interests, and life philosophy. He seemed caring and sincere when I opened up about past heartbreaks. His confidence was magnetic, and he made me feel like the most fascinating, beautiful woman alive. After days of constant communication, Ethan finally asked me out on a proper first date. I spent an embarrassing amount of time getting ready, wanting to look perfect. When we met up at the restaurant, Ethan looked even better in person. He gave me a long hug and couldn't stop complimenting how I looked and how he felt like the luckiest guy in the world. Over dinner, we lost track of time chatting and laughing. Ethan was so curious about my hopes, dreams, and opinions on everything under the sun. He really listened and made me feel heard. When he confessed it was his dream to find someone to travel the world and start a family with someday, I practically swooned. Everything just seemed to click into place so effortlessly with Ethan. In the blissful first few months of our relationship, Ethan made me feel like I was living in a romantic movie. He would bring me flowers for no occasion, leave sweet little love notes for me to find, and make time for adventurous dates. We spent endless hours cuddled up talking about our future, planning dream vacations, and thinking of baby names. Ethan fulfilled my every need and desire before I even had to ask. I had never had someone care about me so deeply. My friends were amazed at how quickly he practically worshipped me. I truly thought I had met my soulmate. But gradually, I started noticing some worrying behavior from Ethan. If I wanted a night out with my friends, he would get mopey and try to make me feel guilty for not spending time with him. He became suspicious about where I was and who I was talking to when we weren't together. Ethan also started making snide remarks about certain friends, saying he thought they were bad influences bringing negativity into my life. At first, I thought his behavior came from missing me, but I soon realized his concern was possessiveness and jealousy. Whenever I confronted Ethan about his controlling ways, he somehow managed to turn it around on me. He claimed my accusations hurt his feelings and made him feel distrusted after he had done nothing but love me. Ethan had a way of twisting facts and warping my own perspective. He slowly isolated me from friends and kept me confused about what was real. I started relying on Ethan to define my own reality and needs. His manipulations became so subtle that I didn't see I was falling deeper into his toxic web. By the time I realized how abusive and unstable Ethan was, it felt impossible to leave. Anytime I tried to break things off, he shifted back into the doting, loving boyfriend, insisting no one would ever care about me the way he did. He made me believe I was helpless without him. When I finally worked up the courage to break it off for good, Ethan unleashed a terrifying campaign to destroy me. He hacked my social media accounts to post lies painting me as mentally unstable and obsessively in love with him. He contacted my employers and friends to twist ugly versions of fights from his point of view. In an instant, lifelong friends and colleagues blocked me, thinking I was insane. Picking up the pieces of my reputation and sense of self after Ethan's abuse was the hardest thing I'd ever done. For a long time, his manipulation made me question my own mind and judgment, but taking back control of my life showed me how strong I truly am. I know now that predators like Ethan exploit people's vulnerabilities, but it was never my fault. One day I may give love another chance, but I listen to warning signs and stand up for myself instead of being blinded by charm. Escaping Ethan reminded me that even in the darkest times, hope and joy can be found in self-love. I still shudder when I think back to that weekend with Luke. We had matched on that dating app, both avid outdoorsy types looking for adventure. His photos showed him scaling sheer cliff faces, carving up steep ski slopes, and hiking remote backcountry trails, living life right on the edge. I was enthralled. When he suggested a weekend hiking trip deep in the mountains, I eagerly agreed. The idea of venturing out into the untamed wilderness with a kindred spirit made my heart race. The drive there was long and winding, but we never ran out of things to talk about. We bonded over our lust for adrenaline and nature's beauty. Luke told me thrilling stories of near-death scrapes and breathtaking places he'd explored all over the world. He made me feel like an amateur, out of my depth but eager to push my limits with someone experienced at my side. By the time we arrived at the secluded trailhead, I felt like I'd known Luke for ages. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I practically bounced with excitement as we shouldered our packs, ready for adventure. That first day was exhilarating. We hiked for hours past mist-shrouded forests and roaring rivers, up switchbacks carved into steep canyon walls. Luke navigated it all like a pro, showing me hidden grottos and designing vistas I never would have found alone. When we paused to rest, he told me about the local plants and animals, ancient native legends, and long-forgotten mines tucked away in the folds of the mountains. I was enthralled, intoxicated by the beauty around us and Luke's passion for this rugged landscape. We set up camp in a flower-filled meadow as the sun dipped below the ridges, golden light bathing the valley. Luke built a crackling fire, and we stayed up late into the night bonding some more beneath the dazzling stars. I eventually drifted off, tired but blissful. But the next morning, Luke was like a different person. Gone was the gleam in his eye, the playful banter, the infectious enthusiasm. Where yesterday he was engaged and attentive, now he was brooding and distant. As we silently broke camp and started hiking again, a tense, uneasy atmosphere descended. I tried gently asking if he was okay, making light small talk, but he only gave terse one-word replies. That mounting excitement I'd felt was replaced by knots in my stomach. We hiked for hours, the trail becoming steeper and more treacherous. I kept looking to Luke for guidance, but his stony expression remained fixed ahead. Jagged cliffs and loose scree made me nervous, but Luke trudged on relentlessly. By the time we stopped briefly for water and snacks, I was shaken. We were so deep in the back country, completely isolated and at the mercy of the elements. And of Luke. Apprehension flooded me when I realized I didn't actually know this man at all. As the day wore on, the terrain grew even more punishing. Traversing a narrow ridgeline buffeted by winds, I cried out for Luke to wait up, reaching for his hand. He paused and gave me an odd vacant look before turning away and continuing on. I inched along alone, knuckles white as I clung to the rocky outcroppings. A twisting unease settled into my gut. When I finally caught up to Luke's retreating figure, I tried suggesting we start heading back before it got dark, but he insisted we could make it over the next pass if we hurried. Uneasy but not wanting to argue, I reluctantly followed. By the time we submitted the pass, it was nearly nightfall. The route down the other side was peerless in the deepening gloom. When I slid several feet down a steep scree slope, crying out in panic, Luke peered down with that same empty stare before carrying on. I scrambled to my feet, shaken. As we picked our way down the sketchy trail, I could barely see Luke ahead of me. Exhausted and rattled, I wanted to give up right there, but I had no choice but to stumble after his shadowy silhouette. It was with overwhelming relief that I saw our moonlit campsite eventually materialize out of the darkness. But Luke insisted we press on through the night to make it back to the car, ignoring my plea. Finding some last reservoir of strength, I forced my aching body onward, blinded by the blackness. My mind spun with exhaustion and adrenaline. Dawn's first light was a blessed relief after that endless night of hiking. When we finally dragged ourselves out of the woods to the trailhead, I nearly wept. Without a word, Luke got in the car and started driving. I sagged against the window, alternating between fitful napping and hypervigilant monitoring of my inscrutable companion. The hours crawled by in agonizing silence. When we at last pulled up at my apartment, I hastily grabbed my gear, ready to escape. But Luke's hand darted out and clamped around my wrist, making me gasp. He yanked me towards him, his eyes suddenly blazing. In a low voice, he told me he couldn't wait for our next adventure. I wrenched myself away, stumbling out of the car just as that cold laughter echoed behind me. I didn't look back. After barricading myself inside my apartment, I immediately blocked Luke on the dating app, my hands shaking. The thrill-seeking adventurer I had been so enamored with online had inexplicably transformed into a menacing stranger. That weekend still haunts me, how quickly an idyllic trip became a harrowing psychological ordeal. I don't know what changed out there in the isolation of the mountains, but it revealed a sinister side to a man I thought I knew. I won't soon forget that lesson, or the memory of Luke's empty stare boring into me as I cried out into the growing darkness. My name is Grace, and I thought I had it all: a thriving career, financial security, and now what I believe to be the perfect man. I was a successful businesswoman running my own tech company that I had built from the ground up with sheer determination. After years of tireless work, my company was flourishing, and I was finally reaping the rewards of all my efforts. I had a luxury apartment in the city, a new car, and a substantial savings account. At only 35, I felt on top of the world. Professionally, I was at the peak of my career, but my personal life had always taken a backseat. I typically worked long hours and dated sparingly. With my business established, I decided to try one of those popular dating apps. I went on a few lackluster dates with men who didn't hold my interest. I was about ready to delete the app altogether when I matched with Tom. Handsome with brilliant blue eyes, muscular arms, and a warm smile, he seemed like the full package. His dating profile said he was an entrepreneur who had recently sold his successful tech startup and was looking for a new venture. We messaged back and forth for weeks before finally meeting up. Tom exceeded all my expectations. He picked me up in a shiny luxury car and took me to the trendiest new restaurant in town. Over dinner, our conversation flowed effortlessly. Tom was smart, ambitious, and curious. He asked thoughtful questions and seemed genuinely interested in my work and opinions. We both understood the demands of running a business and shared the same work ethic and drive. I was accustomed to bored dates who tuned out when I discussed my work, but Tom engaged with my entrepreneurial passion. I found myself eagerly planning our next date before the night was over. Tom and I quickly became inseparable. We traded funny work stories and motivated each other to push ahead with new ideas. I started envisioning a future together. A few months into dating, Tom told me about a promising new business venture, a software startup that was sure to be a home run. He said he had invested some of his own money but needed capital to fully fund the launch. Tom asked if I would be interested in coming on board as an investor and partner. He promised I could double my investment in a matter of months. I was intrigued but also cautious, as any savvy business person would be. Tom patiently answered my numerous questions about his proposed software, potential market, and expected profits. He provided slick marketing materials and financial projections that appeared very convincing. His enthusiasm was infectious. I started to get truly excited about the opportunity to partner with Tom and share in his next success. After much consideration, I decided to invest a substantial amount from my personal savings into Tom's startup. He effusively thanked me and promised we would be celebrating our success in Italy by the end of the year. I trusted Tom completely and did not bother thoroughly verifying his claims or getting outside opinion. I realized too late how foolish it was to hand over such a large sum on blind faith alone. Immediately after I transferred the funds, Tom became distant. He stopped calling and texting as much, always seeming too busy to meet up. My unanswered requests for updates on the software launch piled up. An uneasy feeling began to gnaw at me. I tried contacting the other investors that Tom had told me about only to find that all their information was fake. The office address he had given me turned out to be a vacant building. It slowly dawned on me that Tom's whole identity was fabricated. Every detail of his life that he had shared so convincingly was an elaborate lie. I desperately confronted Tom over the phone only to have him laugh in my face. He callously admitted that it was all a carefully planned scam to trick successful, trusting women out of their savings. The business, the investors, none of it was real. He had studied my background to understand my dreams and vulnerabilities before targeting me on the dating app. Tom orchestrated our chance meeting and entire relationship to manipulate my emotions and exploit my optimism about finding love. I was left completely devastated, both financially and emotionally. I felt like a fool for ignoring all warning signs and handing over my hard-earned money so foolishly. The fake future I had imagined with Tom evaporated instantly. I tried to track him down, but he had wiped his online presence and vanished without a trace. The police could find no real leads. He had executed the scam flawlessly. My friends and family said I should have known better and been more careful. But Tom had played the role of dream man so convincingly that I did not see the deception coming. I prided myself on being a shrewd businesswoman, yet had still allowed myself to be tricked when it came to affairs of the heart. I was too trusting, too eager to believe I had found the perfect man. It took me over a year to rebuild my savings and my broken self-esteem. The financial setback forced me to sell my company right as it was taking off. My dating life is on indefinite hold as I still struggle to open my heart again after it was so cruelly manipulated. But I have determined to learn from this horror story and emerge wiser in both love and business. I tell my tale as a warning sign to others and keep sharing it until the day comes when no scammer can make a fool of me again. I never could have predicted that a simple right swipe on a dating app would spiral into a waking nightmare of fear and paranoia. It all began innocently enough when I matched with Alex. His profile seemed unremarkable, just a few casual photos and a brief bio that didn't set off any immediate alarms. We exchanged messages over the course of a week or so, and he came across as a friendly, down-to-earth guy. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet up for a first date at a trendy cafe in the heart of the city. In retrospect, the subtle red flags were there from the very beginning, but I was too naive to recognize them. Throughout our date, Alex peppered me with an onslaught of personal questions that went far beyond the typical getting to know you banter. He seemed intensely curious about the minute details of my life, the precise neighborhood I lived in, the daily routine and schedule I kept, the intricate ins and outs of my job and duties. At the time, I brushed it off as him simply being an inquisitive person, perhaps a little too eager to learn about the woman he was hoping to pursue a romantic connection with. However, as the date wore on, Alex's demeanor took an unsettling shift. What had begun as casual conversation morphed into an almost interrogative line of questioning, his eyes boring into me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. And when I finally mustered the courage to politely extricate myself from the situation, citing an early morning the next day, Alex became almost frantic in his attempts to prolong our time together. He grew agitated, his voice taking on a pleading, insistent tone as he tried to convince me to stay, to have just one more drink, to let the night linger on. The desperation in his eyes made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, and I knew I needed to extract myself from that situation immediately. In the days that followed, I tried to shake off the lingering unease from that bizarre encounter. Surely I was just being paranoid, reading too much into what was ultimately an awkward but harmless first date gone awry. But a nagging sense of disquiet lingered, a feeling that something wasn't quite right. It started as a subtle prickling at the back of my neck, the unmistakable sensation that someone's eyes were trained on me, watching my every move. At first, I chalked it up to my overactive imagination, the residual jitters from that off-putting date with Alex. But the feeling only intensified with each passing day, evolving from a fleeting suspicion into a full-blown conviction that I was being watched, studied, hunted. I'd catch glimpses of a figure lurking in the shadows as I left work, or feel the weight of an unseen gaze fixed upon me as I went out my daily routines. Each time I'd whip my head around, desperate to catch the source of that unsettling stare, or whatever, or whoever, it was always managed to dissolve back into the urban landscape before I could get a clear look. The psychological toll was immense, a relentless undercurrent of anxiety that seeped into every aspect of my life. I found myself in a constant state of hypervigilance, my eyes darting furtively at every sound, every movement in my periphery. Sleep became an elusive luxury, with restless nights spent tossing and turning, imagining every creak and groan of my apartment building to be the telltale signs of someone's encroaching footsteps. It wasn't until one fateful evening that my suspicions were finally terrifyingly confirmed. I had been out grabbing dinner with a friend, and as I returned to my apartment complex well after dark, I noticed a familiar silhouette lingering in the shadows of the entryway. My heart plummeted into my stomach as I recognized the unmistakable figure of Alex, his gaze locked onto me with an unsettling intensity that made my blood run cold. In that moment, every instinct screamed at me to turn and run, to flee from the perverse reality that was unfolding before my eyes. But I found myself rooted to the spot, paralyzed with fear and disbelief as Alex offered a small, chilling wave of recognition. It was like a twisted reenactment of our ill-fated first date, but this time there were no casual pretenses, no attempt to disguise his true intentions. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in abject terror, before something primal within me finally kicked in and propelled me back towards the safety of my car. I drove in a panic daze, my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel, my mind a whirlwind of horrifying realizations. Alex had been following me, studying my routines and movements with a meticulous, predatory focus, and now he had chosen to reveal himself in the most brazen, terrifying manner possible. From that point on, my life became a waking nightmare of hypervigilance and constantly looking over my shoulder. I filed a report with the police, but without any concrete evidence of explicit threats or physical harm. Their hands were effectively tied. All they could do was issue a stern warning to Alex, a mere slap on the wrist that did little to assuage the overwhelming sense of violation and vulnerability I felt. In the weeks and months that followed, the overt incidents of being watched or followed seemed to subside, but the lingering trauma remained. I deleted every vestige of my online dating profiles, determined never again to let the tendrils of the digital world bleed into my real life in such a horrifying fashion. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings at all times, varying my routines and schedules in an effort to thwart any potential stalkers or predators. I installed security cameras and reinforced the locks on my doors and windows, desperately trying to fortify the boundaries between my world and the dangers that had so insidiously infiltrated it. But no matter how many precautions I took, I could never quite shake the nagging sense of vulnerability, the feeling that I had been irrevocably violated in some fundamental way. To this day, I can't help but wonder about Alex's true motivations, the depths of his disturbed psyche that drove him to such obsessive predatory behaviors. Was he simply a socially inept loner who took an innocent infatuation too far? Or was there something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface, a deeply disturbed individual for whom stalking and violating boundaries was just the tip of the iceberg? I may never know the answers, but the experience has left me forever changed. A once trusting, open soul hardened by the harsh realities of the danger that can lurk behind even the most innocuous of digital interactions. The world of online dating, once a realm of seemingly harmless potential connections, has been irrevocably tainted, the Pandora's box that can never be fully closed or unseen. All I can do is move forward with a heightened sense of caution and self-preservation, forever haunted by the chilling reminder that the monsters we should fear most are not the ones lurking in the shadows, but the ones who can so easily infiltrate the bright, sunny world of our everyday lives. I should have known better. The signs were there from the very beginning, as clear as day, but I was too caught up in my own fantasies to recognize them for what they were, red flags warning me away from a dangerous man. When I first matched with Chris on that dating app, I saw only his cute profile picture and shy bio. In my mind, I painted an image of a sweet, gentle soul who just needed a little coaxing to come out of his shell. I imagined myself being the one to draw him out of his shyness and bring him into the light. What I didn't see was the darkness lurking underneath the surface, slowly poisoning his mind. Our first few conversations were pleasant enough. Chris was quiet, speaking hesitantly, but he seemed receptive to my playful banter. I saw his shyness as a challenge, one that I confidently believed I could overcome with my natural charm and vibrancy. Looking back, I can see now that his terse responses and lack of engagement should have tipped me off that something was amiss. But I barged ahead, convinced that if I just kept trying, I could get him to open up. When Chris asked me out on a real date, I was thrilled. I spent hours picking out the perfect outfit and planning light-hearted topics of conversation to keep things fun and flowing. During the date itself, I carried the dialogue almost single-handedly, filling awkward silences with anecdotes and observations, while Chris just nodded and picked at his food. Occasionally, I pulled a detail or two out of him about mundane aspects of his life, but efforts to learn more about his inner world were met with polite deflection. Still, I soldiered on, certain that in time I could peel back the layers to reach the real Chris hiding underneath. Over the next several weeks, the pattern continued. I would chat brightly about my day or my interests, while Chris responded in noncommittal murmurs and monosyllables. Once in a while, he would offer up some surface-level personal information, but any attempts to delve deeper were subtly but firmly rebuffed. When I asked gentle, probing questions about past relationships, interests, or future goals, he would shut down or change the subject entirely. I told myself he just needed to warm up to me before opening up more. It wasn't until our fifth or sixth date that the first hairline cracks in the facade began to show. We were having dinner when Chris made an offhand comment about a woman at the next table who was laughing too loudly. He muttered under his breath, just loud enough for me to hear, about how women like that were so arrogant, flaunting themselves for attention. I tried to laugh it off, but the bitterness in his voice gave me pause. Still, I wasn't ready to give up the rosy narrative I had constructed in my head. I convinced myself it was just a bad day and put the incident out of my mind. But similar remarks kept slipping out, revealing traces of resentment and hostility lurking beneath Chris' mild-mannered exterior. When female waitstaff were friendly with male customers, I heard him quietly seethe about how they were clearly flirting for bigger tips. Once, a woman bumped into him by accident, and he grumbled about her not watching where she was going because she thought she owned the place. Any small annoyance or inconvenience he encountered seemed to get blamed on the supposed vanity or selfishness of women nearby. I tried gently calling out those generalizations, suggesting that he might be misreading the situations, but he would just shrug and say I didn't understand because I was one of the nice ones. At that point, I was starting to feel uneasy, but some stubborn part of me still hoped I could be a positive influence in his life. I thought maybe if I just showed him more compassion and understanding, I could gradually change his attitude. It wasn't long before things escalated from offhand remarks to outright hostility. Chris began accusing me of exhibiting the same flaws he saw in other women. If I dressed us up for a date, I was vain. If I didn't respond to a text instantly, I was deliberately ignoring him. He labeled perfectly benign behaviors as attention-seeking or manipulative when coming from me. His tone toward me became more contemptuous by the day. When I tried to call him out and set boundaries around how I expected to be treated, it only made him angrier. He called me selfish, heartless, a tease, all the things he supposedly despised in women. In his eyes, I had become part of the monolith of femme fatales who had spurned him all his life. The shy, sweet guy I thought I knew and vanished completely, replaced by a bitter, angry misogynist seething with resentment. The night I broke things off, Chris exploded in a tirade of accusations and insults. He blamed me for leading him on, insisting I never genuinely cared about him when all he had done was dare to trust me. I stayed calm, but inside I was terrified by the blackness in his eyes, stripped of any hint of reason. When I left his apartment, he continued hurling words like daggers into my back, promising I'd regret this. Later, he bombarded me with furious texts and voice messages, alternating between vitriol and desperate pleas to take him back. He blamed his actions on everyone and everything but himself, his distant mother, school bullies, the popular girls who overlooked him. Everyone had failed him, and I was just another heartless woman proving that his bitterness was justified. The toxic stew of self-pity and hatred brewing inside him had completely overwhelmed any redeeming qualities I once imagined seeing. In the end, I had no choice but to block Chris on everything. I stared down those angry red flags for far too long, wanting to believe there was light underneath when, in fact, it was only an abyss, one I'm grateful not to have fallen into. My eyes are open now to the darkness posing as shyness, the hostility cloaked in quiet. I still vividly remember the day I first matched with Leo on Swipe Right. His dating profile picture showed a tall, slender guy with kind brown eyes behind big hipster glasses and a shy, crooked smile. His bio was short and simple, stating he enjoyed hiking, reading epic fantasy novels, and watching obscure documentaries. He seemed sweet, intelligent, and perhaps a little nerdy and introverted. Overall, he gave off a gentle vibe, so I decided to take a chance and swipe right to match with him. We started messaging through the app and hit it off right away. Leo was so easy to talk to over text. He asked lots of thoughtful questions about my job, family, and hobbies, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know the real me. He didn't just stick to small talk. After chatting for a few days, I suggested we meet up for coffee downtown. I picked a spot on a busy street with plenty of people around, just to be safe. You can never be too careful meeting an online match in person for the first time. When we met up, Leo looked identical to his photos, a bit over 6 feet tall with messy dark brown hair that flopped over his forehead. He dressed simply in jeans and a button-down shirt. Leo was soft-spoken when he talked, mumbling his words, and staring at the ground like he was afraid to make eye contact. I thought his obvious shyness and nerves around me were kind of cute. It made me want to put him at ease and bring him out of his shell a bit. We started dating and going on more trips to museums, mini golf courses, and new restaurants Leo had never tried. I gently tried to encourage him to become more assertive and confident. I could tell his introverted personality and lack of self-assurance made it difficult for him to put himself out there. Since I'm much more outgoing and decisive, I naturally took the lead in our new relationship, planning all our fun date activities I thought Leo would enjoy based on the hobbies listed in his minimal dating profile. He eagerly went along with all my suggested plans with a sweet, slightly amazed enthusiasm, like he was surprised someone wanted to spend so much time with him. If I casually mentioned I liked something, he would make a mental note of it, filing the information away to thoughtfully surprise me with that item or experience later on. Leo was always so eager to please me. After a few blissful weeks together, little things about Leo's behavior started to bother me. He was becoming a bit too eager, too accommodating, too clingy. He always wanted to know where I was, who I was with at all times, and what I was doing. Leo would get upset and anxious if I didn't text him back immediately or if my plans didn't involve him. I started to feel smothered by how much attention he seemed to need from me. The honeymoon phase was wearing off. One sunny Saturday afternoon, when Leo texted yet again asking when he could see me that weekend, I knew I had to have the talk. We met for coffee and I gently but directly explained that I valued him as a person, but I just wanted to be friends moving forward. I tried to let him down as kindly as I could. But that's when everything drastically changed between us. Leo immediately broke down, begging me to give him another chance. He said he had never felt this intensely about anyone before. He swore up and down that he would change anything I wanted, do absolutely anything to make me happy. My stomach dropped at the intensity of his reaction. I held firm that my feelings had cooled, but his desperate, outsized reaction concerned me. In the painful days following the breakup, Leo began texting me long emotional letters about how heartbroken he was, how it was his entire world, his only source of happiness. He showed up at my regular Saturday morning yoga class, claiming he just happened to be in the neighborhood and wanted to get my opinion on something. I quickly rolled up my mat and left, asking the studio to permanently ban him from the premises afterwards. Then one busy work day, I looked out my office window and saw Leo sitting in his car across the street, blankly staring up at the entrance to my building. When I ran down and angrily confronted him, he claimed he was just parked there to get lunch at a nearby restaurant. But I knew he was lying. His stories and excuses kept changing and contradicting each other. It was painfully obvious he had come to essentially stalk me at my workplace. I told Leo in no uncertain terms that all contact from him had to cease immediately, and I never wanted to see or hear from him again. He grew hysterical, sobbing that he couldn't control what he did when it came to women he cared about. Leo admitted to also stalking and harassing his ex-girlfriends, saying he just couldn't force himself to let go, no matter how hard he tried. I was terrified and immediately cut all contact. Over the next few weeks, I took every possible precaution to stay safe. I varied my daily routine erratically, took new and different routes to work, parked in random lots instead of my assigned space. I had security escort me in my car every night after dark. But despite my efforts, Leo kept managing to find me. He left countless unhinged voicemails begging for another chance, saying he forgave me for hurting him. Most disturbingly, Leo somehow found out where my sister Emily lived across town and sent elaborate flower arrangements to her house in an attempt to manipulate her into giving him information about me. One evening I came home to find my front door unlocked when I knew I had locked it that morning. Nothing seemed disturbed inside, but I knew without a doubt Leo had been in my apartment while I was out. He was clearly escalating, and I was terrified but unsure of how to make him stop for good. The next day, I immediately filed a restraining order and informed my building security to only allow visitors I had pre-approved 24 hours in advance. I also started taking Krav Maga self-defense classes at my gym, working to gain skills that might help protect me if Leo tried to get violent. Now I constantly look over my shoulder wherever I go, anxious that I'll turn around and see Leo behind me. His misplaced desperation to be with me has morphed into a dangerous, delusional obsession. I don't know how far he'll eventually go to try and get me back under his control, but I do know I need to be ready to vigorously defend myself. What started as a sweet online dating match has turned into my worst recurring nightmare, and I refuse to let myself become Leo's next victim. I still can't believe how easily I was duped. I've always considered myself a good judge of character, not one to be easily manipulated or fooled. But I guess loneliness has a way of making us all a little more gullible. It started when I downloaded that new dating app, Love Connect. I was feeling optimistic, thinking this could be a great way to meet someone new. After filling out my profile and preferences, I started swiping. There were a lot of decent options, but no one really jumped out at me at first. Then I came across his profile. Let's call him Matt. His photos showed an athletic, attractive guy in his early 30s, with warm brown eyes and a kind smile. He worked as a teacher, enjoyed hiking and gardening, and loved animals. I immediately felt drawn to him, so I swiped right. To my happy surprise, we matched right away. Matt initiated the conversation, complimenting my smile and asking thoughtful questions about my job and interests. I was impressed by how genuinely he seemed to want to get to know me as a person. Over the next few weeks, we texted and talked on the phone nearly every day. The more we interacted, the more I felt like we were forming a real connection. Matt told me all about his life. He had a big family back in his hometown that he was close to. He also confessed he had been hurt badly in his last relationship, which was part of why he was ready to meet someone new. I found myself opening up too, sharing things with Matt I'd never told anyone. Our conversations flowed so naturally, it was like we'd known each other for years. I kept waiting for the first sign that something was off, some red flag that would tell me to put on the brakes. But there was nothing. Matt was thoughtful, funny, and a great listener. He seemed sensitive and emotionally available. I couldn't believe my luck in finding such an incredible match. After a few weeks, I was really starting to fall for Matt. I'd imagined all the things we would do together, from weekend camping trips to meeting each other's families. He kept saying he felt the same way, and that he couldn't wait to meet me in person. We made tentative plans for our first date. I was over the moon. This amazing man actually wanted to be with me. The day before our scheduled date, I texted Matt confirming the time and place. No response. I assumed he was just busy, so I didn't think much of it at first. But the next day came and went without a word from him. Confused and worried, I called straight to voicemail. I sent a few more texts, asking if he was okay or needed to reschedule. Still nothing. It was like he had just disappeared. I was crushed, wondering if I had said or done something wrong. The silence continued for days, then weeks. Eventually, I had to accept that Matt was just gone. As the shock wore off, questions started running through my mind. Who was this person I'd shared so much of myself with? Was any of it real? In a final attempt for answers, I did a reversed image search on Matt's dating profile photos. What I found made my heart sink. The pictures were stock images, pulled from various websites. Matt wasn't a real person at all. He was completely fabricated, likely by some cruel scammer or catfisher. I was completely shaken, feeling violated that someone had gained my trust and affection under false pretenses. All of Matt's personal details, the loving words, the future plans, they were all lies. I have no idea what the motive could have been, whether it was just a sick prank or something more insidious like trying to steal my identity. What haunts me is that there were no red flags, no signs at all that Matt wasn't the person he portrayed himself to be. I went into this experience cautiously optimistic, sure that I would recognize any shady behavior. But the scam was so perfectly executed, even I was completely fooled. It makes me paranoid, wondering how I can ever trust someone from an app again. My friends keep telling me not to let this one experience make me jaded when it comes to online dating. They say there really are genuine people out there looking to connect just like me. I want to believe them, but my trust has been badly shaken. I was so convinced Matt was real, so utterly sure we had something special developing between us. If I was wrong about that, how can I believe my judgment of anyone's character moving forward? This whole ordeal has left me feeling insecure, doubtful, and very alone. I went into online dating hoping to find a meaningful relationship. Instead, I feel more isolated than ever. My heart hurts for the bond I thought Matt and I were forming. Coming to terms with the fact that the person I was falling for never actually existed at all. That sting of betrayal will take a long time to heal. I gave so much of myself emotionally, only to have it thrown back in my face in the cruelest way. So for now, I'm swearing off online dating entirely. My confidence has been shaken too badly. But even more than that, I'm mourning the loss of that naive openness and optimism that allowed me to be so vulnerable in the first place. I hate that this experience has made me more closed off. I don't want to lose the ability to connect meaningfully out of fear. I know there must be a balance, a way to protect my heart without sacrificing emotional intimacy. When the hurt lessens, I hope to find that balance again. For now, though, it's time to turn inward and focus on rebuilding and healing. The more I reflect on it, the more I realize there were some subtle signs that things with Matt might have been too good to be true. The way he always knew exactly what to say, exactly how to make me feel understood and cared for. It was like he was playing a part, saying all the right things, but not from a genuine place. I also remember a couple of inconsistencies in the details he told me about his life. Little things that seemed innocuous at the time, but now stand out as possible cracks in his fabricated persona. My mind was so caught up in the fantasy of this perfect man that I ignored those tiny red flags. And that's the most frustrating part, knowing that if I hadn't been so love-struck and naive, I could have protected myself from this deception. I let my desire for connection override my critical thinking. I handed my trust over too freely without verifying who I was really giving it to. Moving forward, I need to learn from this mistake. I can still hope for the best in people, but combined with careful discernment. Before growing close with someone new, I need to look for inconsistencies and take things slowly. An authentic bond forms gradually over time, not through constant high-intensity contact right from the start. After swiping on a few potential matches, I came across a guy named Jordan whose profile made him seem really sweet and genuine. He said he was looking for a real connection and wanted to find someone to go on adventures with. His photos showed him doing fun activities like hiking, kayaking, and playing with his dog. He seemed sensitive and outdoorsy, which I liked. Jordan and I started messaging within the app and really hit it off. We had a lot in common and conversation flowed easily. After a week or so of nonstop messaging, Jordan asked me out on a proper first date. I was thrilled and we made plans to meet for coffee. The date went well. Jordan was just as charming in person as he was over text. He was attentive, asked me a lot of questions, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me better. At the end of the date, he said he had a great time and asked if he could see me again soon. I happily agreed. Over the next several weeks, Jordan and I went on a few more dates. We'd go to museums, try new restaurants, take long walks through the city talking for hours. Things were going well, but slowly Jordan started to get a bit clingy. He would text me constantly, get upset if I didn't respond right away, and wanted to see me every single day. One day after I got busy with work and had to cancel our plans, Jordan showed up at my office with flowers and takeout lunch as a surprise. It seemed sweet at first, but then he started doing it almost every day. He would also make comments that indicated he was keeping tabs on my social media activity and knew details about my day that I hadn't told him. When I asked Jordan for a little space, he got incredibly upset. He said he didn't understand why I was pushing him away when we clearly had something special. I tried to gently explain that things were moving too fast, but Jordan just got more insistent. He started calling me late at night crying, begging me not to leave him. He said he would be lost without me. At this point, I knew something wasn't right, but when I tried to break things off, Jordan refused to accept it. He started showing up at my regular hangouts hoping to run into me. He messaged my friends asking about my whereabouts. He even called my mom begging her to convince me not to end things. I was seriously freaked out. Blocking Jordan's number didn't matter because he just messaged me from different apps and profiles. His messages ranged from vicious insults to desperate pleas for another chance. He somehow found out my class schedule and would leave me gifts after every lecture. I was relieved when Jordan finally stopped contacting me, but that only lasted a couple weeks. Right as I was starting to feel safe again, strange things started happening to my social media accounts. My passwords had been changed and posts were being deleted. Jordan was behind it. When I finally threatened to get the police involved, the harassment and stalking behavior stopped. I ended up deleting all my dating profiles, making my social media private, and keeping my head down. I was so shaken up by the experience that I'm wary of online dating again. Looking back at those first few sweet, innocent dates we had, I never could have imagined how obsessed and unhinged Jordan would become. I learned the hard way that you really can't be too careful with online strangers. Some people are not what they seem. The whole experience really left me rattled. I used to be such a trusting, open person, but now I find myself constantly suspicious of people's motives. I analyze every new match profile and text within an inch of its life, looking for red flags. I'm hyper aware of boundaries and any sign someone is getting too attached. The smallest thing can set off alarm bells and send me into a panic. Part of me worries I'll never shake this lingering paranoia, that my concept of what's normal in relationships is forever skewed, that I'll never be able to just relax and enjoy getting to know someone without questioning their every move. When I told friends what happened, some of them said they weren't surprised, that Jordan had seemed a little off from the start, but I was too caught up in the excitement of a new romance to notice any red flags at the time. I've replayed those early conversations in my head a million times, overanalyzing every word in hindsight. I beat myself up wondering how I could have been so blind. The stalking may have stopped, but the emotional scars still linger. I find myself withdrawing from social situations and hesitating to put myself out there again. I know logically that what Jordan did says more about his issues than me. But it's hard not to take it personally, to wonder if I somehow brought this on or gave him the wrong idea. Maybe in time I'll regain my confidence and be able to date with an open heart again. For now, though, all's are up. I'm vigilant about protecting my privacy and keeping personal details off social media. I screenshot questionable interactions to document the crazy, and I listen to my gut when someone seems off rather than making excuses. As unsettling as the whole ordeal was, in some ways it taught me important lessons, like how to set clear boundaries from the start and beware of people who don't respect them. How obsession and manipulation can masquerade as charm and romance if you aren't careful, and to value my safety above sparing someone's feelings. I may never see the good in people quite as easily as before, but I also know the signs now when something veers into unhealthy territory. Consider me jaded when it comes to modern romance, but also wiser for it. My dating app days aren't necessarily over for good, but from here on out, I move forward with far more caution, self-protection, and awareness of red flags. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. That's on me. It all started when I downloaded the dating app on a whim one night, not really expecting much to come of it. But after a few days of casual swiping, I matched with a guy named Sebastian who seemed perfect. Sebastian was cute, charming, and always knew how to make me laugh. We hit it off right away, and it wasn't long before we were texting each other daily and going on incredible dates all around town. About 3 months into dating, I felt like things were really starting to get serious between Sebastian and me. We were spending most weekends together, often taking little weekend trips out of town or making plans for future vacations and holidays. I was starting to fall for him hard. That's when strange little things started happening that didn't quite add up. Sebastian would forget small details about stories he had told me in the past or would make vague excuses when I asked if I could come over to his place. There always seemed to be a reason. He was renovating his kitchen. The place was a mess. His roommate had people over, etc. I thought it was a little odd at the time, but didn't think much of it. Then one Saturday afternoon, when Sebastian was supposedly out of town, I ran into him at a local restaurant with another woman. He looked completely stunned and quickly ushered the woman out his side door of the restaurant. Later, he claimed it had just been an old childhood friend in town for one night that he was catching up with over lunch. I knew in my gut something was very wrong, but I ignored the sinking feeling in my stomach and chose to believe him. After that day, I started paying closer attention to Sebastian's stories and behaviors, keeping a mental list of any inconsistencies, lies, or things that just didn't add up. He had told me he was an only child, but then made references to time spent with his brother growing up. His job, his commute, his schedule, none of it seemed to line up when I thought back on our conversations. Whenever I confronted him about contradictions in his stories, he always had elaborate excuses and grew defensive very quickly. My suspicions finally led me to do something I'm not proud of. While Sebastian was in the shower during a weekend together, I checked his phone. What I found made me feel sick to my stomach. He had romantic text conversations with his wife, texts filled with intimate details and the mundane ins and outs of a shared daily life I knew nothing about. Photos of Sebastian smiling happily with two young kids. Group texts planning upcoming family vacations together. I felt the room start spinning and had to sit down. This whole relationship had been a complete lie. I was the other woman. In that moment, it became crystal clear what a master manipulator Sebastian was. He had constructed an entire double life, and I was just a small deceitful part in it. I got myself out of that relationship right away, ignoring Sebastian's tearful pleas and profuse apologies when I confronted him about what I had seen. He tried desperately to contact me for weeks, spinning more lies and fabrications and promising he would lead his wife for me. But I knew that nothing he said could be believed or trusted. I was simply a pawn in some twisted game for him, and he had played me perfectly. In the months that followed the breakup, I was racked with pain, doubt, and shame that I had fallen so completely for Sebastian's scam. How could I not see through his lies sooner? Why did I ignore the warning signs and red flags when they appeared? I felt like a fool for having trusted him and believed his manipulations. I started to lose faith in my own judgment and discernment. How could I ever trust anyone again after being so utterly fooled? Eventually, intensive self reflection and conversations with my therapist helped me regain clarity and perspective. I came to understand that Sebastian's despicable, duplicitous behavior was not a reflection on me or my worth as a person. His willingness to construct an elaborate double life and use people spoke only to his own damaged, disordered psyche. I had simply been caught up by a master manipulator, and I couldn't blame myself for being deceived by someone so cunning. Though the experience left me with deep emotional scars, it also gave me newfound strength and wisdom. I learned to listen to my gut instinct much more closely, watching for any red flags or inconsistencies. I refused to ignore those low warning signs again, no matter how tempting it was to avoid confrontation or give someone the benefit of the doubt. My eyes were wide open. Though hurt and anger initially consumed me, over time I worked hard not to let bitterness take root in my heart. I knew that Sebastian wanted to exploit and use me, but I refused to hand him power over me any longer. Despite what happened, I still had faith that there were many wonderful, trustworthy people in the world. When I was ready to date again, I knew I would enter any new relationship with an open heart, albeit a cautious one. In the end, Sebastian turned out to be nothing like the caring, charming man I had thought I knew so well. But regardless of his lies, I knew I was still me, flawed yet resilient. Wiser, stronger, and more discerning than before, and more committed than ever to living my life with integrity, compassion, and care, the very qualities Sebastian so clearly lacked. As painful as the experience was, it taught me invaluable lessons. I learned how to spot a counterfeit a mile away, and I certainly wouldn't be fooled twice. I'll never forget the day I matched with Dina on that dating app. She was easily the most gorgeous woman I'd ever seen, with piercing green eyes, flowing blonde hair, and a smile that could light up a room. I couldn't believe my luck when she messaged me first, complimenting my profile and asking I'd like to grab coffee sometime. We exchanged a few flirtatious messages over the next couple of days, and the chemistry was undeniable. I was smitten, and it seemed like she felt the same way. When she suggested swapping some sexy photos, I'll admit I was a bit hesitant at first, but the allure of this stunning woman taking an interest in me was too much to resist. Plus, she promised she'd keep them private just between us. Feeling brave and frankly a little horny, I sent her a few risque shots. That was my first mistake. Over the next week, the messages from Dina became increasingly aggressive and demanding. She wanted more and more explicit photos, threatening to share the ones I'd already sent if I didn't comply. I panicked, realizing I'd fallen for some kind of cruel trap. But she had me right where she wanted me. I was terrified of the consequences if those photos got out. So I kept sending them, hoping that would satisfy her and make her go away. But it was never enough. The requests became a torrent, and the threats escalated. She said she would send the photos to my boss, my family, even post them publicly online if I didn't pay her a large sum of money. I was backed into a corner, my stomach in knots with anxiety and shame. I considered going to the police, but Dina had covered her tracks well. There was no way to trace the account or prove her identity. And I knew that even if they could, I'd be the one facing humiliation and potential criminal charges for producing and distributing explicit content. I felt totally powerless. Finally, after weeks of this nightmare, I decided I had no choice but to pay her. I drained my savings account, scraping together the thousands of dollars she was demanding. The transactions were all done in cryptocurrency, leaving no paper trail. As soon as the money was sent, the messages stopped, but the damage was done. I was utterly devastated. I felt like the biggest fool in the world, taken in by someone who had exploited my desires and insecurities for their own twisted gain. Even worse, I had no idea if Dina would keep her word and actually delete the photos. The thought of those intimate images being shared or falling into the wrong hands kept me up at night. My relationships and work life started to suffer as the anxiety and paranoia consumed me. I barely slept, constantly checking my phone and social media, terrified that the photos would surface at any moment. I became withdrawn and irritable, making up excuses to avoid social situations. It was a living hell. Months passed, and thankfully the photos never did emerge. But the trauma and shame lingered. I was too embarrassed to tell anyone what had happened, worried they'd think I was an idiot for falling for such a scam. So I suffered in silence, trying to piece my life back together. To this day, I'm still not sure how I let things spiral so far out of control. I guess I was just desperate to connect with someone to feel desired. And Dina seemed like the answer to all my lonely, horny prayers. But instead, she turned out to be a predator, ruthlessly exploiting my vulnerabilities for personal gain. The whole experience has left me scared and mistrustful. I'm terrified to even consider online dating again, worry I'll end up hurt or humiliated. Sometimes I still get a pit in my stomach when I think about those photos and the hold Dina had over me. It's a feeling I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Looking back, the warning signs were there from the start. Dina was just too good to be true. The perfect woman showing interest in an average guy like me. I should have known it was all too convenient, too easy. But the allure of her beauty and attention blinded me to the danger. Now I'm just grateful the ordeal is over, even if the psychological scars remain. It's a cautionary tale I'll carry with me forever, a harsh lesson in the risks of trusting strangers, especially on the internet. I may never fully recover from the trauma of what Dina put me through, but I can at least take solace in the fact that I survived and emerged somewhat intact on the other side. The experience changed me profoundly. I'm much more cautious now about who I interact with online. I no longer take people at face value or make assumptions about their motives. I'm working on rebuilding my self-esteem so I don't find myself craving external validation. Healing is a long process. Some days are better than others, but I'm determined not to let this destroy me. What Dina did was cruel and unjust. I won't give her the satisfaction of ruining my life. Instead, I want to help others avoid what I went through. So I share my story as a warning about predators masquerading as romantic interests. Don't let desire cloud your judgment. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Guard your heart and your privacy. You never know who's really behind that enticing online profile. I still have trust issues and paranoia, but I'm taking it one day at a time. Some scars fade faster than others. All I can do now is learn from the past while working to build a happier, healthier future. A future where I rely on inner strength, not external validation, and where no one can exploit me like Dina did ever again. I still remember the day I downloaded that dating app. I was feeling lonely after having gone through a breakup a few months prior. All my friends were coupled up, and I was tired of being the perpetual third wheel. I hoped the app would help me meet someone special to connect with, maybe even a relationship if I was lucky. That's when I came across his profile. He seemed nice at first glance. His photos showed him hiking, out at restaurants, and spending time with family. His bio said he enjoyed trying new foods, traveling when he could, and was looking for a relationship. I swiped right, and we matched immediately. We started chatting and really hit it off right away. He was attentive, asking me thoughtful questions and making me laugh with funny anecdotes and jokes. After about a week of constant messaging back and forth, he asked if I wanted to meet up in person. I was thrilled. Our virtual chemistry seemed promising, and I was excited to see if it translated in real life. We met at a cafe near my apartment on a sunny Saturday afternoon. He looked just like his photos. Tall, blonde hair, warm smile. We ended up talking for hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly. I found myself mesmerized. He was so easy to talk to and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. As we finally said goodbye for the evening, he asked if he could see me again soon. I said yes without hesitation. Over the next few weeks, we went on several more dates around the city. We cooked dinners together, saw movies, went to museums and local shows. He even accompanied me to a work function when I needed a plus one. Things were going so well. I could feel myself falling for him a little more each time we hung out. He just got me. The relationship felt so natural and real. One night, as we cuddled on the couch at his place watching a movie, he started opening up about his past. He told me how he had been severely bullied and mistreated by various people throughout his life, classmates, coworkers, even family members. As he described some of their awful behavior, I could hear the pain in his voice. It broke my heart. He said he was still working on getting justice and closure for it all. I didn't want to pry too much into the details, just glad he felt comfortable confiding in me. In hindsight, I realize now that was a major red flag I should have paid more attention to. But in the moment, I was touched he was being so vulnerable. I wanted to be a supportive, understanding partner. Things started to change between us after that intimate night. Slowly at first, then more noticeably over the next few weeks. Sometimes when we were out together in public, at the mall, in a restaurant, taking a walk, He would fixate on and linger near strangers passing by, just staring for a long time. A disturbing look of anger and disgust would cloud his face. When I asked what was wrong or if he was okay, he would simply mutter, "It's nothing," or "I'm fine," before quickly changing the subject. One Saturday, we were clothes shopping in a crowded mall when he suddenly grabbed my arm in an ironclad grip. "That's him," he growled under his breath, glaring at a middle-aged man looking at dress shirts a few stores down. Before I could respond or ask who he was talking about, my date was marching toward the stranger with clenched fists. When he reached the man, he began loudly spewing accusations and insults about torment from high school. The confused man tried backing away, insisting he didn't know what my date was talking about. But my date kept advancing, yelling about finally getting justice and making him pay. Soon a crowd gathered and security had to get involved to pull the two men apart before things got physical. I was stunned and ashamed. I managed to pull my screaming date away from the scene before security could detain him, but it was a wake-up call. This behavior was dangerous for him, for innocent bystanders, and for me if I continued the relationship. I avoided his onslaught of calls and texts for the next few days as I tried to process it all, but he showed up at my door one evening, begging me to listen and forgive him. He claimed the man at the mall had ruthlessly bullied him in high school, nearly ruining his life back then. He thought I would understand and support his need for payback. I took a deep breath and told him his recent behavior had been scaring me, the stalking, confrontations, and irrational bursts of anger over past grievances. I said he clearly had unresolved trauma from high school but needed professional counseling and anger management help, not violent retaliation. He looked stunned, then enraged. He accused me of being selfish, cowardly, and betraying him. Said I'd have been just like all the others, leading him on only to abandon him in his time of need. Before I could respond, he stormed off. I quickly shut and locked the door, extremely unsettled. Over the next week, I received countless voicemails from him, alternating between desperate pleading and vulgar hostility. He said he needed me by his side for support to finally confront his remaining childhood tormentors and make them atone. He became increasingly unhinged, talking about getting redemption at any cost. His messages went from vaguely threatening to outright disturbing. I knew I needed to fully break things off for my own safety. When I tried calling him one last time, it went straight to voicemail. His dating profile had been deleted too, poof like he'd never existed. My unanswered texts piled up. It's been about 6 months now without any further contact or signs of him, thankfully. But I still feel shaken when I think back on our relationship and how things spiraled. How could I not have recognized the disturbing signs earlier? His sweet, charming facade had masked a very dark side, an obsessive and twisted quest for vengeance. I initially went on that dating app with optimistic hope of finding love. Instead, I'm just grateful my experience with this man didn't ultimately put me in real physical danger. I still worry and wonder about the strangers he irrationally confronted like that poor mall guy. Where is my ex-date now? Has he sought help or found new targets for his sociopathic score settling? All I know is that I will be far more cautious and alert for red flags when meeting anyone from online dating in the future. I still can't believe I fell for it. After connecting with Connor on Swiprite, we had been messaging back and forth for a few weeks before deciding to meet up in person. When I arrived at the coffee shop we had agreed upon, I immediately recognized Connor from their profile pictures. We hugged briefly and got in line to order. As we sat down with our drinks, the conversation flowed easily. Connor was just as charming and funny as they had seemed over chat. After about an hour of laughing and swapping stories, Connor suggested we take a walk through the nearby park. I readily agreed, not wanting our date to end yet. We strolled along the paths, admiring the lush greenery and blooming flowers. Connor pointed out different plants and wildlife, displaying an impressive knowledge of botany. I was thoroughly enjoying their company and starting to really like Connor. After circling through the park, we paused at a scenic overlook of the valley below. As I turned to Connor to remark on the view, I was alarmed to see that their face had gone pale. "Are you okay?" I asked with concern. Connor grimaced and pressed a hand to their forehead, swaying slightly on their feet. "I'm so sorry, I'm not feeling very well," all of a sudden Connor mumbled. Before I could respond, their eyes rolled back and they collapsed to the ground. "Connor!" I shrieked, crouching down beside them. Connor was unresponsive. I shook their shoulder urgently. "Can you hear me?" No response. My heart pounded as I realized Connor was unconscious. I pulled out my phone with fumbling fingers and called 911. The operator instructed me to check Connor's breathing and start CPR if needed. Fortunately, I felt a faint breath on the back of my hand when I held it near Connor's mouth. Their chest rose and fell shallowly. The ambulance arrived quickly, having been just blocks away. The paramedics loaded Connor onto a stretcher and into the back of the ambulance. One paramedic stayed with me to gather information about what had happened as I followed behind in my car. At the hospital, I paced anxiously in the waiting room while the doctors examined Connor. 1,000 worries raced through my mind. What if they had a serious condition I didn't know about? What if they never regained consciousness? After what felt like an eternity, a doctor came out to update me. Miraculously, they told me Connor had regained consciousness and all their tests had come back normal. The doctors could find no explanation for the sudden collapse, but they wanted to keep Connor overnight for observation. I sagged against the wall in relief. Connor was okay. The doctor said Connor was asking for me, so I was escorted back to their room. I was unprepared for the sight of Connor sitting up cheerfully in bed as if nothing had happened. "You saved my life." Connor cried as soon as they saw me. "I can't thank you enough for getting me here so quickly." They grasped my hand in both of theirs, gazing at me earnestly. I smiled weakly, still shaken by the ordeal. "I'm just glad you're all right," I replied. We chatted for a bit longer before a nurse informed me visiting hours were over. I told Connor to focus on resting and promised to check on them the next day. When I returned the following afternoon, I found Connor being discharged already. The doctors had found no issues overnight, so they felt comfortable sending Connor home as long as they took it easy for a few days. Connor clung to my arm like a crutch as I helped walk them out to my car. At their apartment, I had them settled on the couch with a blanket and some tea. They continued to thank me profusely for taking such good care of them. I brushed it off, but internally I was pleased that I had made such an impression on them. Over the next few weeks, Connor and I grew closer than ever. We went on more dates, during which Connor would gaze admiringly at me and tell me again how grateful they were that I had saved them. It made me feel good to be their hero. One night at Connor's place, they told me earnestly that they had never met anyone as kind and selfless as me before. They said I had changed their life and they wanted to be with me forever. When Connor kissed me for the first time, I was over the moon. Our relationship progressed quickly after that. Connor started talking about getting an apartment together and wanting me to meet their family. It felt so right that I didn't think twice about diving in. I was falling hard and fast. Then everything came crashing down. I had a strange feeling one night when Connor stepped out to take an important call. I couldn't resist taking a peek at their phone when they left the room. My heart dropped into my stomach. Their recent calls and texts were all exchanges with various women, addressing Connor with a completely different name. In their messages, Connor was clearly trying to arrange first dates with these other women. I frantically scrolled through earlier messages and saw conversations that sounded eerily familiar. Connor planning walks in the park, complaining of illness, expressing undying gratitude to women who had seemingly rescued them. It was all an act, every bit at staged. When Connor returned to the room, I confronted them with what I had found. They dropped the act immediately, shrugging and admitting they had been running this scam for years to take advantage of sympathetic women. I was just the latest in a long string of victims. I wish I could say I dramatically confronted them or reported them to the police, but the truth is I was too stunned and ashamed. Connor just smiled smugly, knowing they had succeeded in manipulating my emotions. I left quietly, not wanting to give them the satisfaction of seeing how much they had hurt me. I took a long break from dating after that. When I finally tried again, I was much more guarded with my feelings. Getting swept up in the fantasy Connor created left me feeling violated and foolish. I know now that if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. My days of blindly trusting a dating app match are over. Looking back, there were some red flags I should have noticed earlier. Connor seemed almost too perfect, charming, attractive, intelligent, and thoughtful. They showered me with praise and affection very quickly without really getting to know me first. And the dramatic hospital emergency seemed like something out of a movie, designed to pull at my emotions. But I was so caught up in the romance that I ignored little doubts and rationalizations. I wanted to believe I had found an incredible connection, so I dismissed anything that might contradict that. It's painful to accept I allowed myself to be manipulated so easily. After the ugly truth came out, I berated myself endlessly for not seeing through the act sooner. My friends tried to remind me that Connor's behavior was in no way my fault, but I still felt ashamed and gullible. With time and distance, though, I've been able to look at the situation more objectively. This was not a reflection on me, but on the disturbed individual who deceived me. Connor was clearly skilled to identify vulnerabilities and exploiting them through intricate planning and emotional coercion. The next time I start falling for someone, it will be for real reasons, not only the ones they want me to see. I have been using this new cheesy dating app for a few months, going on dates here and there, but nothing had really clicked. That's why I was so excited when I matched with Idris. His profile picture showed a handsome guy around my age, with warm brown eyes and a kind smile. We started messaging and really hit it off right away. Idris was funny and charming, and we shared so many of the same interests: books, movies, even obscure bands we both loved. After a week or so of constant messaging, Idris finally asked me out on a proper date. I was thrilled. We planned to meet that Friday night at a cafe downtown. As the day got closer, I grew more and more excited. I took extra time getting ready, making sure my outfit and hair looked perfect. This felt different than my other dates. I really thought Idris could be someone special. When I arrived at the cafe, I scanned the room but didn't see him. I figured he must be running late. After about 15 minutes, I was just about to text him when a man approached my table. "Hey there, are you Jen?" he asked with a smile. I nodded, assuming this must be Idris. But as I looked closer, my heart sank. This man looked nothing like the pictures on Idris' dating profile. Those more brown eyes were now cold and gray. The kind smile had been replaced by thin lips and crooked teeth. My mind raced. Had I somehow met up with the wrong person? "I'm Idris," he continued, sitting down across from me. "It's so nice to finally meet you in person." I stammered some reply, still in shock over his completely different appearance. As we attempted to talk, I studied his face, trying to find even a hint of the man I had been messaging with for weeks, but there was nothing familiar about him at all. Our date was painfully awkward and cut short. As soon as I got home, I sent Idris a message demanding to know why he had misled me about what he looked like. To my surprise, he responded immediately, claiming he had no idea what I was talking about. He said he had looked just like his profile pictures and didn't understand why I was so upset. I was so disturbed, I decided to do some digging online about Idris, and that's when I uncovered the truth. None of our conversations had been real. The person I thought I was getting to know didn't actually exist. Idris' profile, along with our weeks of messaging, had all been fabricated using deepfake technology. Some creep had crafted an elaborate fake identity using photos and videos of a handsome model. But it wasn't just the images that were faked. All of Idris' messages had been generated by advanced AI chatbot software. Every flirty joke, late-night chat, and intimate detail he had shared was completely manufactured. I felt sick to my stomach. How could I have been so foolish, falling for what was essentially a computer program? All of Idris' quirks that had charmed me, our inside jokes, the deep conversations, none of it had been real. I was simply talking to an illusion, an AI persona pretending to be someone he wasn't. The deception and violation I felt was overwhelming. That person had never existed, yet I had allowed myself to develop very real feelings for him. I was devastated, angry, and deeply unsettled. It still gives me chills to think about putting my trust in Idris so completely when he was nothing more than a figment of technology. Since that horrific experience, I've sworn off online dating entirely. The prevalence of deepfake scams and convincing chatbots means you can never be certain of who you're actually interacting with. I'd rather be single than take another chance ending up on an awkward, confusing date with an AI persona. I just hope more people become aware of this disturbing new trend so no one else is lured in and betrayed like I was. Moving forward, I'll be keeping my romantic life strictly in the analog world. The whole thing still feels surreal, like something out of a creepy sci-fi movie. I went from matching with a guy who seemed absolutely perfect on paper to realizing he wasn't real at all. It's crazy how advanced deepfake and chatbot technology has gotten to totally fool someone for weeks on end. I still have all our old message threads saved, and sometimes I scroll through them, shivering at the seemingly human conversations. At first, I felt really stupid and gullible for falling for the scam, but from what I've read online, it's happening to more and more dating app users. The AI programs have gotten sophisticated enough to mimic human speech patterns and develop fake online relationships. Their only slip up is that the technology can't actually show up looking like the identity they created. I keep imagining the person behind the Idris profile, whoever crafted his fake details and strung me along. Are they laughing at my naivety, getting some sick pleasure from manipulating others online? What's their end goal? Data mining? Extortion? Some twisted social experiment? The uncertainty as an extra layer of unease. My friends try to make me feel better by saying this could happen to anyone. I shouldn't blame myself. But I still feel ashamed thinking back on those intimate chats, picturing how I opened up and got invested while the person behind it all was likely just coldly engineering responses. It hurts to realize your relationship was one-sided in the most extreme way, existing only in a machine. I know I have to move on and leave this bizarre, unsettling experience behind me, but my trust is definitely shaken. I'll be much more guarded and skeptical using any kind of dating app or social media platform going forward. When meeting someone new, I'll be analyzing if their personality seems suspiciously perfect, their jokes and stories too smooth. It's terrible to feel that creeping wariness when meeting people used to excite me. But I suppose that's the cost when your first real digital brush with romance turns out to be a complete illusion. Where there's technology, there's potential exploitation. I just never thought it could encroach on something as intimate as dating. It all started normally enough. I had downloaded one of those popular dating apps on a whim, just looking to meet some new people. After swiping for a bit, I matched with someone named Teddy. His profile picture showed a good-looking guy with brown hair and a warm smile. His bio said he was a 28-year-old accountant who liked hiking and watching documentaries. We started chatting and really hit it off right away. The conversation flowed smoothly and he seemed genuinely interested in learning more about me. After a few days of messaging back and forth, he asked me out on a real date. I eagerly accepted and we decided to meet that weekend at a cafe downtown. When I arrived at the cafe, Teddy was already there waiting. He looked just like his pictures give or take some flattering camera angles. We hugged awkwardly and sat down. The date went really well. Teddy was easy to talk to in person, and we discovered we had a lot in common. At the end, we made plans to go out again. Over the next few weeks, Teddy and I went on several more dates. We texted constantly, and I really started to like him. Though we hadn't defined the relationship yet, I deleted my dating apps, feeling optimistic about where things were heading. One day, I happened to open the app we met on just to show my friends some of the crazy messages I used to get. I casually swiped through, and there he was again. Teddy with that same warm smile. His profile was new, created just a few days prior. He used different pictures this time, but it was undoubtedly him. Confused, I messaged him, asking if he had deleted his old account. He wrote back right away, saying something like, "Hey, nice to meet you." He claimed it was the first time we had connected. I pointed out that we had been dating for weeks, but he insisted he had no idea who I was. I didn't know what to think. Why would he pretend not to recognize me? The only thing I could think of was that he was using fake profiles to meet multiple women at once. He probably did this regularly, starting fresh each time, juggling different personas and lies. Though it hurt to realize Teddy wasn't who I thought he was, I knew I had to take action. I found two other women who had been duped by him, and we agreed to expose his deceit. The three of us showed up unexpectedly at his place one night, demanding answers. With nowhere left to hide, Teddy broke down and admitted everything. He had been creating fake dating profiles for years, carefully cultivating a web of manipulation and betrayal. He refused to take responsibility for the pain he caused, insisting that no one was ever supposed to find out. It was chilling to hear him discuss so casually how he took advantage of our trust. In the aftermath, the other women and I supported each other through the waves of anger, doubt, and sadness. I kept replaying every interaction with Teddy in my head, wondering how I didn't recognize the signs earlier. We did our best to warn other women by reporting his profiles. Though it didn't erase the damage, it felt empowering to band together and fight back. I took a long dating hiatus after that. When I eventually tried meeting people again, I was much more cautious and wary. That experience shook my faith in others and left me vigilant for any red flags. Even now, years later, I still have trouble fully opening up and trusting someone new. Teddy didn't just lie about superficial things like his job or age. He fabricated an entire identity meticulously crafted to draw women in. His deception ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. I don't think I'll ever understand how someone could live like that, taking advantage of others with no remorse. Though the scars from that horrific dating app experience will always linger, I'm determined not to become jaded. Not everyone is out there with malicious intent. When the time is right, I hope to try again, even if it means risking being hurt once more. Next time, I'll listen to my instincts and walk away at the first sign of deceit. There are genuinely good people worth finding, even if that means enduring the bad ones along the way. I have to keep believing that. I decided to take a break from dating for a while after the experience with Teddy. My friends were supportive and understood why I needed time to regain my sense of trust. Though it was frustrating to feel so guarded, I knew I shouldn't rush the process. When I finally re-downloaded a dating app several months later, I was nervous those old wounds would reopen. My finger hesitated over the install button, anxiety swirling in my gut. Was I really ready for this? Could I open my heart again without fear? I thought of Teddy's false persona, the snatched moments of happiness before his web of lies crashed down. This time, I told myself I'd balance hope with wisdom. I'd take it slowly, listening closely for any intuited red flags. My first few dates after Teddy were tentative, permeated by caution. I found myself overanalyzing each word and gesture, searching for deceit, but gradually the nightmarish memories faded. Not every match was a con artist. There were genuinely kind souls hoping to make a connection just like me. In time, I met Julian. Funny, smart Julian who listened earnestly and spoke with empathy. On our first date, he confessed his past dating struggles candidly. I recognized our common wounds and knew I could trust him. With Julian, my faith was gradually restored. I learned that even after betrayal, the heart can stay soft. Cautious optimism, not cynicism, became my guiding philosophy. Though the occasional pang of doubt resurfaces, I won't let one bad experience harden me. Now, years after my wounds have healed, I can look back with clarity. I'm grateful for the lesson Teddy gave, though painfully learned. His deception revealed my own naivete, but also strength as I pieced myself back together. To anyone with dating app horror stories, know you aren't alone. See the red flags early and don't ignore your intuition. Take all the time you need to recover. When you're ready, have courage and try again. There is hope. It all started so normally. I downloaded the app on a whim, not expecting much. But after a few swipes, I matched with Austin. Their profile picture showed a warm smile that drew me in. We started chatting and really hit it off. The conversation flowed easily and we shared so many common interests: books, movies, even obscure bands we both loved. After a week of nonstop messaging, Austin finally asked me out on a date. We met at a cafe and they looked just like their photos: tall, fit, with kind eyes and a friendly demeanor. The date flew by as we lost ourselves in conversation. Austin was sweet, funny, and so easy to talk to. When we parted ways, we immediately made plans for a second date. Over the next few weeks, Austin and I fell into an easy routine. We went on hikes, tried new restaurants, visited museums. No matter what we did, I always had the best time with them. I found myself looking forward to our dates and chatting with Austin constantly in between. I started to develop real feelings for this person. One night after another amazing date, I worked up the nerve to ask if Austin wanted to make things official. To my delight, they agreed. We changed our profiles to "in a relationship," and it felt so right. Austin was the perfect partner: affectionate, thoughtful, and so supportive. I'd hit the jackpot finding someone like this on a dating app. A couple months later, things were going better than ever. We spent all our free time together and even took a weekend trip to the coast. I felt so comfortable with Austin and trusted them completely. As far as I could tell, the feeling was mutual. But then suddenly, everything changed. One day, Austin just stopped responding to my messages. At first, I figured they were just busy, but the silence continued for over a week. I started to worry. This wasn't like Austin at all. I called and texted them relentlessly, but never got a reply. I decided to drive over to their apartment, only to find the unit empty. The leasing office had no record of an Austin ever living there. I sat in the parking lot completely confused and alarmed. Where was Austin? Why had they lied about where they lived? In a panic, I started digging for more information. I called the coffee shop where Austin supposedly worked, but they'd never heard of them. The university Austin claimed to attend also had no record of enrollment. It was as if this person had never existed. As the truth set in, my concern turned to utter dread. Austin had fabricated entire parts of their identity. It lured me in with false stories and personalities. I felt ill, realizing I never truly knew this person I had grown so close to. Over the coming weeks, I searched constantly for any trace of the real Austin, but it seemed they had vanished, likely reinventing themselves with another unsuspecting victim. The police couldn't get involved without more evidence of wrongdoing. I was left haunted with unanswered questions. Who was Austin really? Why craft such an elaborate fake life? Were they secretly unstable or dangerous? And how did I not recognize the deception? My friends tried to reassure me that anyone would have been fooled, but I struggled to trust my own judgment after this experience. Though I eventually moved on, the scars remained. I deleted all my dating apps, too afraid of another wolf in sheep's clothing. It took a long time before I could open up and make myself vulnerable again. I still look back at those blissful early days with Austin and ache over the illusion that was shattered, but I'm thankful to have escaped before greater harm was done. This bizarre incident taught me important lessons. Take it slowly when meeting people online. Look for concrete details, not just charming stories. And trust your instincts. If something feels off, don't ignore that unease. Dating can be scary and you can't be too careful. My days of naivety are gone, replaced by caution and sharper discernment. There are predators living among us wearing familiar faces, but I won't be fooled again. In the months that followed, I found myself constantly wondering about the real Austin. Who was the person behind the facade? Part of me wanted to keep investigating to find some closure or answers, but I knew another part of me needed to move on and not get pulled back into the darkness of those events. My friends encouraged me to get back out there, saying I couldn't let one bad experience make me jaded. I started tentatively swiping again, each match filling me with a blend of excitement and wariness. I took it incredibly slowly, looking for any red flags or inconsistencies. To my surprise, I eventually did meet Ben, who restored my faith in dating. His openness and genuineness was a balm for my distrust. We traded social media and got to know each other's friends and family. There were no lies, just a true connection blossoming naturally. As Ben and I grew closer, the lingering ghosts of Austin faded further away. On occasion, I'd still get that paranoid pang and need to double-check some detail of Ben's story or past. But with time, those fears dissipated and I could fully immerse myself in a relationship again, without constantly looking over my shoulder. Part of me knows I'll never have all the answers about Austin. In a way, the not knowing is its own sort of closure, accepting I was a victim of someone's complex lies. I still vet dates thoroughly and listen to my intuition, but I refuse to hand over power by living in fear. Austin wanted to control through deceit, yet I broke free. Now I forge ahead on my own terms, choosing to open my heart once more. The past will not dictate my future. I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship when I decided to give online dating a try. After a few weeks of swiping and messaging on the app, I matched with a guy named John who seemed really great. John was attractive in his photos, said he had a good stable job, and we really hit it off chatting through the dating app. After about a week of constant messaging back and forth, we decided to exchange numbers and meet up for dinner. The first date went amazingly well. John was just as charming and conversational in person as he had been over text messaging. He asked me thoughtful questions about my job, family, hobbies, and really seemed interested in getting to know me better. I found myself opening up quickly about my hopes, dreams, and interests. The conversation flowed easily and we closed down the restaurant talking for hours. John walked me to my car and gave me a polite hug goodnight. I couldn't believe my luck in finding such a great match on a dating app. After years of bad dates and dead-end relationships, it seemed my luck was finally changing. John and I started seeing each other regularly after that dinner. We went out twice a week. He would take me to trendy new restaurants downtown, concerts, museums, and we even went away on a weekend trip together. He was always a complete gentleman, insisting on paying for everything and opening every door for me. I noticed he didn't try to kiss me or push physical boundaries early on, which made me respect him even more. He seemed genuinely interested in me as a person. After a couple months of amazing dates, I could feel myself really starting to fall for John. Things were progressing smoothly and naturally. After about 2 months of dating, John invited me over to his place for the first time. He lived in a luxury high-rise apartment building downtown. When we stepped inside the lobby, I was impressed by how fancy and modern it was. We took the elevator up to the top floor, and when he opened the door to his unit, I was blown away by how spacious, open, and sunlight it was with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. As he gave me a tour, I noticed one of the rooms in the hallway was locked with a keypad. When I asked what was inside, he casually said it was just extra storage space. We had a relaxing night in. John cooked an amazing pasta dinner from scratch. We opened a nice bottle of wine and cozied up to watch a movie. After it ended, we stayed up talking for hours about traveling, family, and our dreams for the future. I was struck by how in sync we were on important issues and how thoughtful and mature he was. When it started getting late, John suggested I was welcome to spend the night. At first I hesitated, but he promised to be a gentleman and sleep on the couch. After some convincing, I agreed since it was so late. Again, I was impressed by what an amazing stand-up guy he was. The next morning, I woke up early and nature called. Still half asleep, I walked out to the bathroom in the hallway. On autopilot, I accidentally tried the door of the locked room instead. To my surprise, it opened right up. Flipping on the light switch inside, I was very confused by what I saw. The room was small and windowless, lined wall to wall with screens showing footage from different angles of the apartment. To my horror, I realized there were hidden cameras filming the living room, bedroom, bathroom, everywhere, even right above the bed. My heart dropped, instantly realizing John had been recording my stay here without my consent. Just then, I heard footsteps and turned to see John standing in the hall looking very worried. He quickly tried to explain that the cameras were just there for security purposes, and it wasn't a big deal. I felt shocked, disgusted, and violated. I told him he needed to delete the footage of me immediately. John refused, saying it was his right to keep the recordings as he saw fit. I felt so betrayed. This man, who I thought was a complete gentleman, had been deceiving me and spying on my most private moments. I rushed out of the apartment in tears, ignoring John's apologies and attempts to justify his huge violation of my privacy and trust. In the aftermath of this traumatic incident, I became much more cautious and wary when online dating. It made me realize you really don't know anyone fully, even after months of great dates establishing trust and intimacy. Once I had some time to process, I decided to take a long break from dating apps to focus on myself for a while. I started going to therapy to unpack why I had ignored some initial small red flags with John instead of addressing them right away. When I eventually did put myself back out there, I was much more vigilant. I did thorough background checks on any potential dates and refused to go over to their place until I knew them extremely well after months of in-person dates in public places. What happened with John served as a chilling life lesson for me on the dangers of online dating and letting your guard down too quickly with strangers. While most dates don't end so traumatically, you truly cannot take people fully at face value, even charming, successful, seemingly upstanding ones who say and do all the right things. I learned to always listen to my intuition in new relationships and dating situations. If something feels even slightly off, not to ignore that instinct or give them the benefit of the doubt, which could lead to excusing away serious red flags. Even when you think you know someone well, you need to proceed cautiously with new relationships until trust is truly established by consistent actions over an extended period of time. Your personal safety and peace of mind should be the priority when dating, not giving someone a chance or feeling pressured to overlook concerning behavior. While properly vetting people takes more time up front, it certainly beats ending up in a creepy hidden camera nightmare scenario with a total stranger. This unsettling experience taught me that taking things slow and really getting to know someone first is crucial, especially with online dating when you have no existing connection or accountability with a person. Once bitten, twice shy. Now I always make sure to guard my heart and privacy until I'm absolutely certain a prospect is worthy of access into my intimate spaces, both physically and emotionally. Caution and skepticism early on goes a long way in avoiding potentially dangerous dating disasters. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.